Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rob Arnold. I'm the Executive Director of Poets House, and I am just here to welcome you to what I know is going to be a really amazing, impactful, and meaningful evening. For me, poetry is the art of meaning, and it is one of our most responsive art forms, and as a result, I think poetry holds our values as people, as humans, as cultures, and I think we're going to see that tonight. It's also one of the reasons why poetry is among the first art forms that gets censored by the powers that be. So I love that we're hosting this evening of Poetry as Witness, and I just want to thank you again for coming and welcome you into the space. If you haven't been to Poets House before, I hope that you'll come back. Upstairs, we have a library of more than 80,000 volumes of poetry with journals and broadsides and other special items as well. We have the writing desk that belonged to E.E. Cummings. We have a lot of really wonderful things upstairs to explore if you haven't already done so. So thank you again for coming tonight, and we will hope to talk to you all at the end of the evening. Thanks again. Maria?
So first and foremost, I would like to thank the Poets House for welcoming us, for welcoming Razom and the Ukrainian Cultural Festival this year. This is the third year of the festival. We started it soon after the invasion because we felt it was critical that Ukrainian voices are heard in New York cultural institutions. And unfortunately, 2 years later, it's still an urgency to program Ukrainian events. The bombings of the Ukrainian cities is more intense than ever. And if you're Ukrainian, you know it. But if you're not Ukrainian, sometimes it doesn't register because our media stopped talking about it. Border cities like Kherson, Sumy, and Kharkiv get attacked. Civilians and soldiers, and remember, soldiers are just civilians, were civilians just 3 years ago. They are attacked by vicious FPV drones that are flown by real people that hunt their victims. And yet it has never been a better time to write poetry and to read poetry. Literary festivals happen in every city in Ukraine. Poets read from stages to large crowds, and this is a great crowd, but in US, you know, we don't really get a poet on a stage reading to the stadium. In Ukraine, they do. And many new collections come out every year in Ukraine, and many of them get translated and published in English almost immediately. So we wanted to highlight some of the voices that got published this year, and we are presenting 3 poets and 3 collections today. It just happens that at the time of intense and radical experience, humanity speaks poetically. The poetry that is created right now is almost all a poetry of witnessing. Whether you're a soldier, a refugee, a civilian living abroad, or a poet in a diaspora, everyone is a witness to the senseless destruction of life. And poetry captures it with directness inaccessible to other art mediums. This is our second Poet as a Witness event, and we are committed to running it for as many years as the work continues, but I really hope this is our last year of doing it. So without further ado, today's presentation is moderated by Wam Blacker. Wam is a scholar of Ukrainian and Eastern European culture at UCL, that's University College London, and a literary translator writing on memory, cities, and Ukrainians' rich multicultural literary heritage. His work has appeared in The Atlantic, The Guardian, Times Literary Supplement, History Today, Literary Review, Los Angeles Review of Books, and other publications. He has spoken about Ukraine, Russia, Poland, and more on BBC Radio 4 and 5, Al Jazeera, LBC, ITV, among others. His translations of Ukrainian authors have been published by Deep Vellum and Harvard University Press and appear in anthologies, journals, and magazines, including Word Without Borders, Modern Poetry in Translation, and The White Review, London Review of Books, The Guardian. And he's working on several more books in translation from what I know, so maybe next event is going to feature him as a translator. He was a Paul Celan Translating Fellow at the Institute for Human Sciences, Vienna in the spring of 2022, and in 2023 he served as a member of the jury for the International Booker Prize. Please welcome Wam.
Thank you so much, Maria, for the introduction. It's always a real pleasure to speak about Ukrainian poetry anywhere, but it's especially a special thrill for me to do that in New York City and in the Poets' House on the invitation of our wonderful colleagues at Razom. And I'm also really, really thrilled to be doing that with three amazing poets and translators. As Maria said, poetry right now in Ukraine is, I think, experiencing a real significant moment, a real remarkable period in its history. The war poetry that's being produced right now is really, I think, must be one of the most interesting and rich and strong literary phenomena happening anywhere in the world right now. I'm really certain of that. And I think in future we will talk about this generation of poets the way we, for example, in the UK talk about the poets of the First World War. I really do believe that. And we have three writers who are writing about the war, but also about other things, and we'll talk about that. And we're lucky to have translators who are working with those texts and bringing them very quickly to English language readers. I'm going to introduce all of our speakers at the beginning so that we can then get into the reading and the discussions. First of all, we have Anna Malihon, a poet from Kiev, now resident in Paris. She's the winner of numerous international competitions and festivals, the author of several poetry books, and of the novel Teach Her How to Do It, and also of a children's adventure story called Karolina's Magic Album. Her poetry and prose has been published in numerous Ukrainian international literary anthologies and collections and have been translated into Belarusian, Bulgarian, Polish, Czech, Georgian, Armenian, English, and French. Her translator, Olena Jennings, is with us also. She is also a poet, the author of the collection The Age of Secrets, the chapbook Memory Project, and the novel Temporary Shelter. And she's translated Ukrainian poets such as Katerina Kalitko, Oksana Lutsishina, Irina Shovalova, and also Vasil Makhno. And I happen to have also translated three of those, so I feel like we're like translation siblings. She's been shortlisted for the Ukrainian Literature and Translation Prize in 2023 for her translations of Yulia Musakovska. And she founds and curates Poets of Queens reading series and press. Next up, we will have Iryna Vikyrchak. She's a poet, a writer, translator, and cultural manager. Before the publication of her latest collection, Algometry, I'm not sure where the stress is supposed to be in that. Is it algometry or algometry? Anyway. She published 2 other poetry collections. She comes from Western Ukraine, and she's lived in Chernivtsi, Kiev, and Lviv, but also in various places in Europe. Her collection of war poems, Letters from Calcutta, was published in Poland as a bilingual Ukrainian-Polish edition. And while living in Wrocław, she worked with Nobel Prize laureate Olga Tokarczuk before moving to France and to India. Her translator, who was with us on Zoom, is Nina Murray, a Ukrainian-American poet and translator who's the author of collections Glapthorn Circular, Alcestis in the Underworld, and several chapbooks. And she has won awards for translations, including of Oksana Zabushko's Museum of Abandoned Secrets, Oksana Lutsishina's Ivan and Phoebe, and her translation of Lesya Ukrainka's Cassandra was performed during the Ukrainian Cultural Festival just recently. An amazing translation. She is also a retired US diplomat. Don't know how many of us can say that, but and she's currently the director of the Connect program for Razom for Ukraine. Our final pair of writers and translators, well, actually a trio this time. Lesyk Panasiuk will be joining us also on Zoom. Ukrainian poet, translator, artist, and designer, a serving member of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He is the author of 7 poetry collections in Ukrainian and has been translated into dozens of languages. His book, Letters of the Alphabet Go to War, which we'll be hearing from today, is published early next year by Saraband. Translated by Ilya Kaminsky and Katie Faris. He is translator and co-translator of 6 poetry collections, 3 anthologies, and 1 libretto, including Ukrainian translations of poetry collections by Valzhina Mort and Ilya Kaminsky. He's also laureate of numerous literary awards and recipient of fellowships from the President of Ukraine, the International Writers and Translators House, House of Europe, Staromiejski House of Culture, Shevchenko Scientific Society, Dartmouth College, Literary Colloquium Berlin, Penn Ukraine Translatorium, University of Alberta. Finally, and the shortest biography I have on my sheet is for Ilya Kaminsky, although probably someone who doesn't need an introduction. Ilya Kaminsky is originally from Odessa, Ukraine, and lives in New Jersey. He's the author most recently of Deaf Republic, which was a finalist for the National Book Award and received Los Angeles Times Book Prize. And his co-translator working on Lesyk Panasiuk's work is Katie Faris, a poet, fiction writer, translator, and academic. Her memoir in poetry, Standing in the Forest Alone, was shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize, and she's a professor of creative writing at Princeton. Okay, that's the introductions. So we've got a very distinguished group of writers and translators. We're going to start off with some readings. So we'll go, each poet will read one poet, we'll have the translation, and then I will ask them a quick question, and we'll go like that. So Anna Malihon is going to be first. So please, Anna.
Hello. I am happy to see you all. I thank you, Maria, for inviting me. I thank you, organization Razom, for organization this my tour. I've been living in Paris for 3 years, so my English it's not good, but I try to speak just a little. And I want to tell a special thank for my publishing house, World Poetry. I don't know if Matvey he's here, no? I want to read one poem in Ukrainian, and Olena will read in English. Не виходь по воду, спивай краплі зі стін свого підземелля. Ти легшаєш так, аж майже колібрі, хоча колібрі п'є за добу до 100 разів. Уся світова волога в очах тих, хто вижили. Вони подумки зав'язують собі руки і лежать на узбіччях, як розділові знаки, без тексту. Чужі недобитки назовуть ці соснові місця Голлівудом і виперуть прапори у пралках із наших домів, і кластимуть прілу брехню у відкриті дзьобоки своїх виблядків, і кров'ю просочені добрі ведмедики, і голоси з підземелля. Не виходь по воду, висмоктуй себе до критичної позначки. Я бачив, як через отвір у тілі дівчинки б'ється серце, скажи це на камеру. І медик уже нічого не ладен сказати, а якби говорили сосни. Купували дочці на літо костюмчик, беріть, може кому згодиться. І волонтерка бере, як на руки беруть живого. Ти остання у сховищі, остання на цій землі. Вийдеш, уже нікого не буде. Та щось і пити перехотілось. А весняна земля смокче собі, як дитина, гірке молоко розстріляних божих корівок.
Don't go out for water. Drink the drops from the walls of your underground shelter. You become lighter, almost hummingbird-like, though hummingbirds drink up to 100 drops a day. The world's moisture in the eyes of survivors. In their minds, they tie their hands and fall on the roadsides like punctuation marks without a text. The foreign vestiges will call these pine-filled spaces Hollywood and wash flags and washing machines in our houses, and will spread dirty lies into the open, the beaks of their sons of bitches and the cute blood-soaked teddy bears, and voices from the underground shelter. Don't go out for water. Drain yourself to crisis. I have seen how the heart beats through the hole in the body of a girl. Say this on camera. And the medic can no longer say anything. And what if the pines could speak? They bought a swimsuit for their daughter that summer. Take it. Maybe someone can use it. And the volunteer scoops it up like a living thing. You are the last one left in the shelter, the last one left on this earth. When you come out, there'll be no one there. You stop wanting to drink. And like an infant, the spring earth sucks the bitter milk of dead ladybugs. Thank you.
We've got some complicated choreography on the stage tonight. Thank you so much for reading the poem and the translation so beautifully and so powerfully. Something that struck me from this poem and also the other poems in the collection is just the power of the images in the language. They're really there are very graphic images here. There are very there's blood, there's bones. You really kind of show us up close the full horror of the war. And my question, I guess, is do you, as a poet, feel like it is important to confront the reader with the full horror of what's happening? You know, I was thinking when I was reading of this phrase, "don't look away," which we often hear when people post information online about, you know, some atrocity happening somewhere. They say, "Don't look away." And when I read your poetry, I felt like I was being told, "Don't look away." So is that something that you are doing with your poetry?
I can answer in Ukrainian. Olena will translate. Ви знаєте, коли поет пише поезію, він має таку ж відповідальність, як і науковець, який розщеплює атом. Тому що слово має дуже великий вплив на людину, на людську психіку.
A poet has the same responsibility as a physicist who is working with the atom and has to it has a very big influence on a person and a really big responsibility.
І перше за все, поет має бути перед собою чесним. Для мене чесність – це головний критерій, коли я працюю над словом.
And a poet has to be very honest, and this is very important to Anna when she is working with the words.
На жаль, я побачила багато жахливих речей. Ми сьогодні говоримо про поезію свідчення, ми свідчимо. І одним війна дала нові слова, у інших війна відібрала мову. І в мене був дуже довгий період мовчання, коли я мовчала, нічого не писала. І я відчула, що я маю відповідальність, я не можу мовчати, я маю писати свідчення в будь-якій формі, хай навіть це не буде схоже на ту форму, в якій я писала раніше.
Anna saw a lot of horrors in her life, and she felt this responsibility to write and to be honest with herself.
Я думаю, що ця поезія має право на існування, хоча про війну зараз пишуть, і в нас є як ветеранська література, письменники, які воюють, пишуть про війну, і письменники, які не воюють, теж пишуть про війну. І часто наше мовчання зумовлено тим, що ми не воюємо, і ми себе питаємо, чи маємо ми право писати про війну.
And so Anna is questioning whether there's a movement of veterans poetry, and since she didn't fight in the war, she is questioning whether she has the right, or poets in general are questioning whether they have the right to write about a war that they didn't experience firsthand.
Сьогодні виходить дуже велика кількість поетичних антологій, присвячених темі війні. І, звісно, там література абсолютно різної якості. І теж постає питання, які вірші мають право на існування, які потрібно відфільтровувати. І я собі відповіла так, що зараз будь-яке свідчення має право на існування, а далі нам покаже час те, що залишиться.
And there are many collections now with different poets writing about the war, and they are varying literary quality, and there's the question, what has the right to exist? And in fact, Anna thinks that all the poems have a right to exist, and with time we'll see which ones, I guess, stand the test of time.
Чи може поезія, поетичне слово зупинити війну? На жаль, ні, але ми маємо відповідальність свідчити, але щоб зупинити війну, ми маємо діяти, ми маємо донатити, ми маємо підтримувати нашу армію. Дякую.
And now we wonder whether our words will stop the war, but no, they won't, but we still can try and write and donate and support the war efforts.
Thank you so much. I have a sort of related question for you, Olena, about you're translating poetry which is dealing with very, very difficult, traumatic experiences, images, violent images. How is it for you as a translator working with this kind of material?
Well, to me, Anna's poetry is very varied, and that it has very vivid images that are beautiful combined with these horrific images. So I think the beautiful images kind of cushion the others, and I think the vivid nature of the images also makes them really stand out. I think for me, translating the work, it was certain poems were more difficult than others. Like the title poem in this book, Girl with a Bullet, that was a really tough one. But I see the importance in translating, and I feel like translation has become more important now than it has ever been, almost. And that it's important to share the poetry with a wider audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely identify with that. Okay, I could ask you lots of questions, but we are going to move on. But they're all going to come back at the end and you can ask your questions. So now I'm going to ask Iryna to come up and read for us. So.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I think I should start with answering William's question about how to pronounce the title of the book. I think it's algometry, more like geometry. And algometry is literally translates from Greek as measurement of pain. I was inspired by a scientific experiment which took place on the International Space Station. So what they did with a little gadget which they use in neurology, in emergency medicine, they measured the sensitivity to pain of the astronauts while they were on Earth. And then, after this, they did the same when they were already in space. And what they discovered, the scientists, is that here on Earth, we feel pain with a much greater intensity than anywhere else beyond the earth. So this book is a collection of my reflection on what makes us human, but also on the experience which we can find painful. It's about empathy and many other things, but in general, it's also dedicated to my generation of Ukrainians. And I will read a poem which describes probably the strongest mark made by history on our generation. Пост-Чорнобиль. Непереливки було нашим батькам, мамам і татам покоління Y східноєвропейських міленіалів. Пильнувати невидимий фон, наші зайві 2 сантиметри печінки, ступінь збільшення щитовидки, розпад імперії, війну на Балканах, лімфузли, гематологію, карієс, санаторний електрофорез, кисневі коктейлі, нафтусю, озокерити, рентгени, планові відключення і термінові включення. Коли палало, ви з татом пили домашнє вино на Говерлі, і звідти було вам видно полум'я, кажете. Тривожні й невчасні, але ми переросли, переросли. І в нашій тривожності вся наша сила. Дякую. Thank you.
Post-Chernobyl. They had it rough, our parents. Moms and dads of the Generation Y, the millennials of Eastern Europe, had to watch the invisible rays, our extra inches of liver, the thyroid degree of enlargement, the Balkan War, the collapse of the empire, lymph nodes, hematology, caries, sanatorium, electrophoresis, oxygen cocktails, the Truskavets mineral water, ozokerites, X-rays, regularly scheduled power cuts, and emergency broadcast. When it burned, you and Dad were drinking homemade wine on Haverla and could see the blaze from there, you tell us. Anxious and poorly timed. But we've outgrown it, Ma. We've outgrown it. And our anxiety is our greatest strength.
So we should now have potentially our translator on Zoom. And I'll go ahead with the question to Iryna first. So oh, there she is. Hi, Nina. So the poem deals with, it's kind of it's an intimate poem, a private poem that deals with a private family space, but it's also a poem which is about great historical catastrophes. And it has this very strange combination of these two things. And as you say in the poem, I think this is this is something you find in the literatures of Eastern Europe and the literature of Ukraine, certainly. Is that clash or that meeting of those two things something which you feel shapes your work? And also, it was very interesting that you said, our anxiety is our strength, which was a very interesting line to ponder. Do you draw some kind of strength in your writing from that historical experience and the way it connects with the private?
Yes, I think I definitely do, especially from anxiety. I think we grew up with anxiety because what I described in the poem, it was the anxiety of our parents, because the catastrophe that happened, they didn't know what kind of effect it will have, what kind of impact on our health for life. So there were lots of all these sanatoriums and places where we could get all kind of treatments. So that's why there are so many these weird words in the poem. But literally, when we were children, we grew up taking all these precautions, and that's the anxiety of our parents, which was passed on to ourselves because we were children, we could not understand, right? So that was normal for us. I think I really want to dedicate this book to the generation of Ukrainians, because this is the generation which was born at the Soviet Union, or practically at the point when it was breaking out. But so we were raised by people who lived in the Soviet Union, but we got rid of it. We are the first generation of Ukrainians who goes to therapy. Everyone goes to therapy. So we are the first generation of Ukrainians in search of our identity to that level, and I think it is thanks to this generation that Ukraine is resisting the Russian aggression to that scale. And so we were shaped by something painful, but this is exactly what made us strong and made us know who we are as a nation as well, right?
Yeah, I definitely have that feeling attending literary events, especially poetry events in Ukraine, that there is something about the therapy room in the room when people are in Ukraine are encountering poetry, especially right now. Nina, I guess my question also is, I'm going to look into the camera, not at the screen.
Sure, that's fine. Thanks.
My question
I'm
to
sorry,
you.
there's like my giant face on the screen is awkward, but
Okay. So my question to you is, I guess, how to convey this clash of the kind of the great historical traumas with the private and the intimate, because I feel like for the translator into English, there's always a risk that this could sound kind of dissonant in some way, or maybe melodramatic in a way that it doesn't in the original. So I wonder how do you deal with that collision of those things in the translation?
it's a great question, but I don't have, I'm afraid as a translator, very much to contribute, because it's the original text does it so well. Iryna's text is so good at combining specific, intimate details with greater sort of historical backdrops. Perhaps it comes naturally to me because I am of that generation. I know exactly what she's talking about. And so, for example, the word Zokerites in that poem, like I know exactly what it is. I can smell it. Like I can still smell it. It's a, for those of you who have not had the pleasure of doing this, it's a petroleum byproduct that is mined from old coal shafts. And it's a kind of tar that is supposed to have salubrious properties, and you just apply it to your parts of the body, and it's very, very strange and sketchy and smells funny. But there was never any explanation to us as children what it is. Like I had to look it up and discover later what it was. It's exactly what Iryna is talking about. It's just, for us as children, it was like, well, a Zokerite treatment, there you go. So it's okay for that to be weird. I'm okay with that. The Great Chernobyl disaster is such a commonplace that, again, like this is so great that this poem comes early in the sequence and sets the tone. And then the other thing that is so important, I think, is Iryna's voice in these poems. That is, you have heard it, it's so steady and incantatory almost. It's like that therapeutic voice, like it's going to be okay. That's the rhythm of it, like it's going to be okay. It's very reassuring, and so I was at pains to preserve the voice. But other than that, all credit to Iryna.
No, definitely credit to you as well, for sure. Yeah, I think having the translator who's lived a similar experience to the writer is an important thing. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I hope we'll come back to this at the end, but we're going to move on. Now we have an entirely online section, and I think the poems are going to be read from Zoom this time. So I think we should hopefully have Lesyk Panasiuk on Zoom to read his poem.
And I'm going to read the first poem. Літери йдуть на війну, складаються у слова, які ніхто не хоче вимовляти. Речення підриваються на мінах, історії обстрілюють системами залпового вогню. У слово «дім» влучає снаряд. Крізь розбите вікно літери «Д» можна побачити, як літера «І» втрачає голову, як провалюється дах літери «М». Мову в час війни не впізнати. Речення такі недолугі. Ніхто не хоче помирати, ніхто не хоче говорити. Біля лікарняного ліжка літери «Й» лежить протез діакритичного знака, якого вона соромиться. Уже вкотре розходяться шви просвітами літери «Ф» від кульових поранень на етимологічному фронті. Який знак втратив язик під час катувань? Палати забиті літерами, що й апострофа не вставиш. Відпадає фарба зі стін. Осипаються слова незрозумілими покручами. І хто ними буде говорити? Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Lesyk, for reading such a beautiful translation, such beautiful original official with the translation. And thank you for all you do right now in your life and for continuing writing poems. My gratitude to the organizers of this festival and to wonderful poets whose work we just heard today, and to their translators. Here is Lesyk's poem, which is coming out very shortly from Sarabandio's books. The book is called Letters of the Alphabet Go to War, and the English translation of the poem is called In the Hospital Rooms of My Country. Letters of the alphabet go to war, clinging to one another, standing up, forming words. No one wants to shut sentences that are blown by the minds in the avenue, stories shelled by multiple rocket launches. The Ukrainian word is ambushed. Through the broken window of the letter D, other countries watch how the letter I loses its heart, how the roof of the letter M falls through. The language in a time of war can be understood. Inside the sentence of the whole, no one wants to die, no one speaks. By the hospital bed of the letter E lies a prosthesis that is too shy to use. You can see the light through the clumsily sewn-up holes of the letter F. The soft science had a tongue turned out due to the disagreement regarding the etymology of torture. There is too much alphabet in the hospital rooms of my country. Too much alphabet, no place to stick an apostrophe. Paintfuls of the walls showering us with words incomprehensible, like men who, in wartime, refuse to speak.
Thank you so much, both of you, for those readings. So my question, first of all, to Lesyk, this is a poem which it brings up a question which actually appears in the work of all three poets, and that's language, and what happens to language in the face of war, in the face of trauma. We often think about war as something which is potentially unspeakable, something where a place where language fails, but also, it's something which really changes language as well. The everyday language of Ukrainians today is very different to the everyday language of a few years ago. It's full of vocabulary related to different kinds of missiles and drones and things like that. So war has this very dramatic effect on language, but it can also, I suppose, confound language. So my question to you, Lesyk, is how has the war and writing about the war affected the way you approach your language, your poetic language? How has it changed in these years, or has it changed?
I have the same situation as Anna Malihon told us before. My poetic has changed, and even we published one book in Polish, in Ukrainian, and in Polish translation with Darina Gladun, who is also a Ukrainian poet. And in this collective books, we tried to find the new way of speaking, and also there are a lot of visual poetry, sound poetry, etc. A lot of experiments to try to find the new language for new reality, because reality in Ukraine has changed. So the old language now can't be suitable for this new reality. Something like that.
Thank you. Ilya, I wanted to ask you also about your approach to translating Lesyk. And when I was reading the bilingual edition and comparing the poems, and I was every so often encountering these moments where there's a difference, sometimes quite significant difference. And then I got to the end of the book, and then there's a small disclaimer, almost hidden away at the back, which kind of admits to us that these are kind of interpretations, maybe, or deliberately different to the originals, but this has been like kind of negotiated with the author. So, for example, in this poem, there's a line about, in the original, you can look through the letter D, and see into it's like the broken window. In the translation, it's other countries are looking through the letter. So changes like that. And I really want to ask you about the process there. What was your thinking in making those little creative adjustments?
Thank you so much. Good for you. It's been a wonderful experience working with Lesyk and his poems. He's such a wonderful, terrific poet, and he works in a very, very broad range of poetry. In the books are obviously poems about war and horror, and there are also very tender lyrics, love lyrics, lyrics of childhood. So it's been really a terrific experience to be in the presence of a real poet. Having said that, I will be the first person to say that I'm not a professional translator. Katie Ferris and I collaborate. We have, quote unquote, translated a lot of poets. Sometimes it's very, very close, and there are some poems in the books that are rather close. Other times, like in the case you mentioned it's a version. So the book is actually called Versions, not translations. And I have done that before previously, another book that I co-translated. We called it, quote unquote, homages, not translations. Luckily, Lesyk is very much alive and well and in front of us, so he could approve the work, and when he didn't agree with something, he told so. We also collaborated. He translated some of my poems, and he did a terrific job, sometimes combining two poems together, and I think it's fantastic. I think the poem needs to be alive in the receiving language. If the poem is just a Xerox copy, well, we have a copy machine for that, or recently we have a chat GPT for that. The poem needs to be alive. It can be machine produced word by word. Yeah, sure, we can do a word by word version, but where is the poem? So that's my approach.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a wonderful answer, and I think that joy of the collaboration and the creativity of the collaboration, which is much more than just someone gives you a text and you do a job. Yeah, it's a real mutual process for sure. Thank you. So I think now we're going to have everybody on stage at once, and we're going to open the floor up to you guys. Although, I don't know, we also did think of reading one more brief poem each, and I think probably we can actually do that, because we're doing quite good, quite well with time. So shall we read these poems very briefly? Yeah. So we got some short ones. Maybe we could start with Lesyk and Ilya. Maybe would that make sense?
Yes, okay. Турбіни гідроелектростанцій. Верхівки дерев стирчать із води, як відкриті переломи річки. Затоплені міста і села, маленькі батьківщини, до яких неможливо повернутись. Як же пощастило тим, хто помер раніше. Турбіни гідроелектростанцій перетворюють старі карти, перетворюють доски пошани, перетворюють дитячі спогади, перетворюють імена родичів і все на електроенергію. Кожен день тепер поминальний. Достатньо тільки вімкнути світло, коли повертаєшся з роботи. Темрява трохи вагається перед тим, як піти.
Lesyk is a very polite person, so she's not going to tell you, but I'm not that polite, so I'll tell you. Oh, sorry, am I unmuted? Yeah, good. She actually wrote this poem before the horrific thing that Russia did at the Ukrainian electric station in Kakhovka. So the poem kind of, in a strange way, the way sometimes best poetry does, it predicts what happened. Unfortunately, I suppose. Turbines of hydroelectric plants. Three spokes take crowns out of the water, like wounds open on the river skin. In the flooded villages, small homes, to which no one returns. How lucky are our dead. They do not see the streets submerged, do not see hydroelectric turbines transform geography of childhood, transform the names of relatives into electric energy, transform each day into day of the dead, just enough to turn on the light. When you return from work, turn on the light. Darkness, how it hesitates before leaving.
Thank you so much. So shall we go in maybe the reverse order? Maybe Iryna, would you like to read yours now?
This short poem is a prayer for everyone who is wandering, who is on their way somewhere, to have always a place to return to, and their people to return to at home. Одіссей. Вертаєш з усіх доріг туди, де завжди видно зірки, де пес впізнає тебе здалеку, де руки пам'ятають усі вимикачі, де нічого не змінюється і, слава Богу, тільки твоя відсутність додає меланхолії. Однак ти ніколи про це не дізнаєшся.
Odysseus, you return from all roads to the place where you can always see the stars, where the dog recognizes you from afar, where your hands remember all the light switches, where nothing changes, and thank God for that. Only your absence adds to the melancholy, except you will never learn about it.
Thank you. And Anna, please.
This poem was written in Paris. I'm a refugee, and when I thought I would never write again. It's my reflection. Я прийду ще в цей матово-білий блокнот. Не письмом, то кружалочком чайної плями. Буде небо важке над міськими полями, буде сипати сніг, як ніколи у цих краях, і сплітатиме пальці нетлінна торішня трава. Я прийду ще в цей світ не з ребра, а з наперстка прощального дзвону. Чуєш ті голоси із нутра світової ріки, хто стояв на мосту, не мочив біографію вдруге. Але, Боже, не треба, не смій закривати блокнот. Я горнятко твоє недобите, горнуся й горю. І я тепер не словами увесь цей кошмар говорю, і це море пливу, і це дно до кінця проживаю. Кришталева хода, ненаситна біда, венеційське намисто, гасне вежа в підсвічнику сонного міста. Thank you.
I will return to this matte white notebook, not with words, but with a tea stain from the bottom of a mug. The sky will be heavy above the Parisian fields. Snow will fall like never before in these parts, and last year's undying grass will weave fingers together. I will return to this world, not from a rib, but from the thimble of a farewell bell. Do you hear those voices from within the world's river? He who stood on the bridge, his biography didn't include a second dive. But Lord, don't dare close this notebook. I'm your mug, not yet broken. I'm pressing against you and burning. Now I'm not just using words to talk about this nightmare and swimming in the sea in its depths until the end. The crystal procession, the unsatiated pain, a Venetian necklace, the tower's light burns out in the candelabra of the sleepy city.
Okay, shall we all come on stage? Yeah. Thank you all so much for reading so beautifully for us. Time for your questions. Please just raise your hand and ask your question. Yes, we have a question.
Thank you all for the readings. I wanted to ask, because I've heard that following the full-scale invasion, having a period of not being able to write for some writers, and instead of going into longer form, that poetry is exploding now and becoming so prevalent. Could you comment on that? I don't know if you were all working exclusively on poetry before, but the idea that poetry is becoming such a popular way of expression as opposed to long-form prose.
Yeah, great question. Would any of you like to answer? Iryna?
Maybe I will start, if you allow me. I did not have the moment or the period of silence after the full-scale war, but the most difficult period for me, it was few months before the war, because the tension was just growing and growing and growing. And just 3 days before the full-scale, I suddenly, and you know, I have friends like all over the world, and they were asking me, like, you know, take your family out of the country, or is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Tell us something. And the questions were coming from everywhere. And on that day, 3 days before the war, I just felt like just cannot be worried as much. I cannot take it anymore. And suddenly, though all my life, all my creative life, I've been told that the poet should write in their mother tongue, in their first language. On that day, I remember I wrote probably the longest poem I ever wrote, and I wrote it in English. Because suddenly it was not making any sense for me to keep writing poetry in Ukrainian for the people who are enduring in all this. And it only made sense for me to write in English, so I could translate or speak to the world about what is happening and how it is happening, how we are living through it. So for me, the change was connected to language. Again, anxiety makes me write poetry. So I was writing also lots of poems, but only in English until maybe recently I wrote my first poem in Ukrainian again. So that's what happened.
Thank you.
Okay, and I understood the question. It's very hard to speak, but I've got a trauma of refugee. It's a really big trauma. And speaking for period of silence, I have to tell, I didn't think for poetry. I thought for, come on, I can live. I have to work hard. I have to make money. I'm afraid of losing my it's not a house, a shelter. I don't know how to say. And I didn't think of poetry a lot. And one moment I understood that I was losing my identity. I'm not a writer anymore. I work hard. I'm a refugee, but I'm not a writer. And I started to think, and God bless Maria Genkin. And I stopped my work, and I took pause. I took a period for reflection who I am, what I can do for what I am in this world. And I started write absolutely new poetry. It's poetry of my refugee experience. I think that poetry has right being, because it experience too. And now I'm writing another book. It's a book not about war. It's a book about my refugee experience. I speak of voices, many refugee. Sorry of my English. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I wonder, do we still have our speakers on Zoom? Maybe Lesyk, if this is something you want to speak to. This question of the genre of poetry in wartime, whether it's particularly important to be writing poetry right now, or is a particularly useful genre for you at this moment, or whether you see that more broadly in Ukrainian literature?
Just more flexible and faster than prose. So it was naturally to all, I think not all, but a lot of Ukrainians started write poetry or read poetry, and they has had a few reasons for that, because we wanted to find who they are, who they really are, because we only know that we are not Russians, but who we are, and also they wanted to find the words for this new reality, and also find people who feel the same feelings, so the same horrific things. So after the full-scale invasion, poetry became a very, very popular thing in Ukraine. And also the question about the pause. I had it, but it was very short. I started to translate a lot of foreign poets who supported Ukraine, just the way to say thank you. But after some time, I understood that I also need to speak, because I'm here now in Ukraine, not abroad, so I need to speak from myself, not from another people. Yeah, something like that.
Thank you so much. And it's such a great point about the speed with which poetry can respond to events that are happening. That was very noticeable, the way that poetry was being written quickly, but also then it's something which you can distribute very effectively and quickly via social media. And the circulation of poetry on Ukrainian social media has been something really remarkable too. Absolutely. Do we have any other questions for the poets, or also for the translators, of course? Yeah.
Thank you very much for this wonderful reading, and for the translations as well. And Lesyk, hi, thank you for joining us late at night. I have a question first to Anna and Iryna. My question is about your ability to, since you have been living outside of Ukraine, outside of the mainland for quite extensive periods of time, do you feel that this connection to what you have been writing primarily changes, or at times you have these anxieties? Sorry, Iryna, for going back to the anxiety aspects, but do you feel that this connection is becoming less dense and less intense? And if yes, how does it impact your poetry? And my second short question probably relates to the question on the genre, but actually it's about topics. Last year I had a conversation with another Ukrainian poet, Ilya Kaminsky, who in a way of complaining noted that the war in a way stole from us, from poets, other topics. We don't write about love, for example. So I guess my question is about topics that are underrepresented currently in your poetry and in Ukrainian poetry in general, and whether you think that there are topics that are not supposed to be covered or expressed, or you retain yourself from these topics. Thank you.
Thank you. So some few questions, and very, very important ones as well. Who would like to begin?
Speaking for connection, I feel this connection more sharp, but it's another. Because when I far from Ukraine, I have another experience, and my view already different. And it's interesting because I stop write about love. No love in my life. I stop write about something beautiful. It's simple, it's a sharp, it's a different form of poetry, of my word. But love for my country didn't change. It's just a little another form.
Your question made me think of people back in Ukraine who stopped going down into shelters during air raid sirens. So which is something probably result of some kind of adaptive mechanism of our psyche, I don't know. So it has become, of course, less intense than it was at the beginning, because it became our norm, the war in general. So I think it concerns everyone, not only us as poets. The experience of living out the war outside of Ukraine, I remember I took very conscious decision during these first days. I asked myself, okay, do I want to, because I had the chance to cut myself off completely from the reality of Ukrainian war. Just, okay, it's easy, you delete Facebook and, you just like, you don't follow the news so much. And if you're away, you just live in your reality, immediate reality around you. But I also, as a poet, I felt the responsibility to be with my people in this. So, because of course I also have family and friends, but also with my people, Ukrainian people in general, with my country. Wherever I go, wherever I live, I still carry my Ukrainity with me. And I've been living abroad since I was 16. I was exchange student, I was here and there, and everywhere, all the time, I had to explain Ukraine to people around, right? Because I was getting questions. And so I kind of feel this mission of talking about Ukraine everywhere I go, even if it's just, maybe a few people or a few friends or a very small group of people around me. But still, I carry this Ukrainity with me, and I have to talk about it. And I took a conscious decision to live through this with my people, because it's a responsibility of someone who identifies themselves as a poet. Of course, many questions, as Anna said. Do I have the right to write about the war in Ukraine if I'm not living through the air raid sirens and explosions every night? And then when you are in Ukraine and you're not at the front line, you ask yourself, do I have the right to write about the front line if I'm not there? So I think every one of us has to stay honest and write about ourselves in the context of this war, no matter how we experience it. So the title of my war poems book is The Letters from Kolkata, because I was living there. And it's the most honest title to my poems about war as I could have done it. So it's just a different point of view from different place on earth to what is happening. And I think every single point of view is important here and makes us a witness as well.
I have a question for Ira about your relationship with your Ukrainian friends. You lost a part of friends, or because it's an important question. I lost some friends after I moved to abroad. It's another reality.
I have lost friends to the war, but I don't think I've lost any friendships.
Дякую.
Thank you. And maybe I'll just give Lesyk a chance to answer the question. Could be about the question of distance and proximity to Ukraine, or it could be about this problem of certain topics being stolen from poets by the war, which I think is a really important one. Is that something that you feel has affected you?
Sometimes I found some words or lines that I used in my poems. I found them in the poetry of another Ukrainian poets, and I know that we write it separately. But it's okay because we try to find the new words, and sometimes it's the same words because we share the same reality. And also now I have an air raid alert, and I'm near the window, as Iryna told you. It's normal for Ukrainians.
We have advice from the room for you to go to the shelter, but I guess you know what you're doing. Thank you. So I guess we have time for just one more question, I think. Any more questions for the poets, for the translators? Yes.
Hi everybody. Thank you so much for your beautiful poems. Дуже дякую. My question is about hope in your poems, and I'll explain a little bit what I mean. So when I'm listening to your poetry, right, about the war, the reality that Ukrainians are living in, right, is so heavy, right, and it's so heart-wrenching, right, and we're reading about the girl with the hole in her body, and we're reading about, Novakhovka, about that disaster, and about all of these things that Ukrainians have been through. And I was thinking about, poet as a witness, right? And you're sharing things as they actually are. But as a consumer of art and poetry and films, right, sometimes it feels almost impossible because it feels like just darkness, right? And I'm wondering, when you're writing these words, do you feel like there's pieces of hope, of light, of beauty that just naturally come? Or do you also feel like you have to kind of insert them in there to, make the reader feel like there's more, there's not only bad things, there's not only this terrible, terrible war? I hope that question makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Iryna, maybe would you like to begin?
I feel like answering was another poem, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to take advantage of it. I think before the war, we still had energy to talk about like this great victory. and about the time after the war. And it still exists, I think, in our consciousness, the time after the war. But I caught myself and others also imagining that after the war, things will be as they were before, and everything will be fine. But there is, if there is one word which I could use for the answer here, it would be irreversibility of all the losses, of all the price that we have to pay just to endure.
Thank you. Anna.
I don't feel hope. I don't feel beauty. I feel only one thing. Now we have to do what we can to do together. Because now it's many discussion clubs, which world will be after war, but war it's now. We have to do something now, not a narrative after war. It's my things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we'll come to Lesyk with this question. If you have anything to add to this question of hope or of beauty or of thinking about after the war, indeed.
I lost on the beginning of full-scale invasion. I lost my home in Bucha, and after my returning to Bucha, I found the destroyed apartment, and now I don't think I have something to return, or I understood that I need to be more flexible and do everything I can to bring the peace or the something like peace time closer. Do everything I can. That's why I joined the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lesyk, and thank you just especially for your service, and also thank you for staying up so late, because it is very late in Ukraine. Thank you for your questions. These were really great questions. I want to, before we thank our poets and translators, I want to thank Razom and Maria and the organizers for making this possible. I really want to thank Poets House, and especially for managing the stage and the tech so smoothly. We didn't make it easy for you, I know, so thank you so much. And yeah, finally, thank you to Ilya, to Nina, to Olena, to Anna, to Iryna, to Lesyk,
Thank you.
and to Katie.
And thank you for your
so much.
moderation. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.